Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I was doing some work on the Patreon program this morning, just doing some bookkeeping and taking care of stuff, and I got to thinking about how many people come and go through the Patreon program over time. And while the total number of subscribers has continued to grow at a definitely acceptable level, the churn in the program is pretty decent. And it's interesting because Rudy talks from time to time about the churn in his patron program and about how few people he has who have been there for multiple years, how most of the people in his program were not there during the last market cycle, and how most of the ones there now will quit before the next market cycle. And it's interesting to kind of see parallel things in my patron program. And it got me thinking a lot about markets in general and how most people do not have the patience to make money in most markets. And of course, most of my life I was in the stock market, and of course I still am. I always will be, but most of the investing I've done in my life has been in the stock market, and the same exact thing happens over there. You see people who maybe see a news report and they think, "Oh, XYZ company, that's going to be the next big thing." And they put a bunch of money in it, and a month later, it's down 20%, and they panic and pull all their money out. They get discouraged. Maybe they stop investing altogether. You know, maybe people can be enticed to invest in their 401k while they're at a particular employer, but it's pretty common amongst Americans that when people leave an employer, they cash out their 401k. And it's wild. And the numbers of people who do this are it's discouragingly high. And I remember reading about it many years ago before the pandemic when it was a lot more common, and it was something like 10 or 15% of people, when they left an employer, they would cash out the 401k, they would pay the 10% penalty to the IRS for cashing money out of it before they were 59 and a half years old. They would pay the income taxes on it, and then they would use the money to take a vacation because they just didn't have the patience to make money, the patience to build wealth, the patience to invest calmly over a long period of time. And man, is that so much more evident in the TCG market. And I always talk about how the TCG market is such a crazy place compared to the stock market. It's like the meth addicted Down syndrome cousin of the stock market, just with how crazy it swings, how much more emotional everyone is. And it's really weird because, yeah, everybody works jobs they hate to make a little money that they get to keep after all their taxes, all their bills, everything else that they hate paying for in their life, and then they invest that little bit. It's the same way whether you're in the stock market or the TCG market. But it's like in the TCG market, because this is attached to games, people get so much more emotional about it. They get so much more emotional about the idea of investing in general in TCGs, or that the money that they invest in it, they just feel so much crazier about it when it swings around. And the fact that most people don't make it an entire cycle in this market, it's so telling, and it's such an incredible piece of evidence of how emotional most people are. I look back at things like all the Pokemon tins and EX boxes and V boxes and ultra premium collections and those kind of supplementary products, the supplemental things that we were buying here on Final Trade. Me and my patrons and my channel subscribers, we were buying those in late 2022 and early 2023. And I have a spreadsheet set up that models what I was buying back then and what it's worth today. And I plugged in the new, most recent numbers for the values of those sets. And those things are up literally in 2.5 years. They are up 720%. And most people leave the market before they experience a full cycle. And it's just so unbelievable. And it's just like, golly, if people would hang around more than 6 months, more than a year, more than 2 years, more than 3 years, because cycle lengths are not constant. And Pokemon specifically, it started on the down cycle in late 21, and it was basically late 24 before it really kind of caught on fire again. So it had a 3 year down and back up until it was kind of above the line and it was crazy again. So a 3 year period to get there. And man, I cannot even begin to remember all the times people talking about how Pokemon is dead, Pokemon is worthless, it's never coming back, it's horrible, and all of that in that 3 year time period. And now I made a comment on, I believe, one of Rattle Pokemon's videos recently. I made a comment over there because I love his videos, and I was just commenting about essentially people's wild behavior in the Pokemon market right now, where people go and they wait outside of Target or Best Buy or whatever place for hours in the morning to catch a restock to potentially get a chance to buy an unknown amount of an unknown Pokemon product. And I made a comment about it of basically, everybody just needs to step back, go find something else fun to do for the summer instead of camping out in front of Best Buy every morning. Because when the Pokemon market eventually cracks, when it turns downwards, which it will, then you will be able to buy these products in unlimited quantity, free shipping, below MSRP, sometimes below wholesale, and get them sent to your house, and you will get as much as you want. It was interesting because, a gentleman responded to my comment, and he was being polite. He wasn't doing like normal internet shit posting. He was being polite. And he said, "What do you base this off of?" And he was much more polite than my tone there, but basically asking like, what proof could I offer that that will happen? And I said, because that's exactly what happened last time. And you could tell this was a person who had not come through the 2020 and first half 2021 Pokemon insanity and boom, and then lived the 21 through 24 Pokemon market down cycle. And it's going to be the same way this time. There are a lot of people out there right now who are getting discouraged because they're going to GameStop every morning, waiting outside, and then maybe they get a few packs. Maybe they get a Blooming Waters collection. Maybe they get an ETB or a couple of build and battle boxes. And so they wait for hours to get that thing. And, maybe they're flipping it on Facebook Marketplace that afternoon and they're making a little bit of profit and they're reasonably happy with that. Or maybe they're true fans and they go and they want to get that car magic of opening it in their car and boosting their pools by opening it in their car like the most crazy of Pokemon addicts do. But they're getting discouraged and eventually they'll go away and they'll miss the best part of the market. They'll miss that part of the market where we here on Final Trade, the viewers and the patrons and me, in 22 and early 23 and even into 24, we sat there and we would look at things like the GameStop dumps. Yes, GameStop used to do dumps. Our friend Mason over at Cardinal Gaming, he made a really great video a couple years ago just showing how bare his Pokemon display shelves were in his store, and very rightfully complaining that at the exact same time on that day, GameStop was blowing out Pokemon below wholesale prices. And why was Mason, who runs a game store and hosts Pokemon events, unable to get product while GameStop was blowing it out below wholesale? But that's what we were living at the time. And everyone here on this channel, we were sitting there just salaciously salivating at buying that stuff, and man, I bought the hell out of it. And the number of Evolving Skies booster packs that I bought at that time for, adjusted price on buying them in tins and EX boxes and ultra premium collections was $2.50 to $3. And, most people do not have the patience to sit through that. Most people do not have the fortitude to endure the abuse of everybody telling them that they are stupid for buying Pokemon when it's worthless. Most people don't have that. Most people in the stock market don't have that when they buy a high quality, multi generational blue chip company that has an unbelievable moat in the market, and yet they will sell it if it's down 3% on one day. Most people don't have the patience and the fortitude to endure temporary paper losses on assets. And over here in the TCG market, where everything is so much more dramatic, every effect is so much more magnified because of the high friction and low volume in the TCG market. Everything is so much more wild, and the average participant is so much more emotional. It's even crazier how much opportunity people willingly give away, how much opportunity they choose to miss out on because they just don't have the patience to sit on a box of cards for a couple of years, to sit on V boxes and EX boxes, to sit on booster packs pulled from the same, and sit on them for literally 2.5 years to make a 720% return. My goodness. If you told me that I could reasonably, reliably make a 720% return after all fees, everything else in the stock market, my goodness, I would lose my mind. I would lose my mind with excitement, and I would make your head spin with how fast I was transferring assets to do it. And yet, over here in the TCG market, we show it again and again. You know, we show the data, we bring the receipts, we show the returns. And yet, people are still too impatient, too emotional. And it's just the wildest thing to me, because you think of, I think back to bad choices I made in investing at certain times in the mid 2000s and through the 2010s, and earlier times in my investing career when I didn't quite have the philosophy on investing that I have now. And I think about some of the bad choices that I made with particular trades, with mostly things I chose not to buy that I should have had the courage to buy, or I wish I had had the courage to buy. And I think of the missed opportunity. And then I try to project that onto people in the TCG market, people who message me and say that they sold out of their entire Magic collector box collection in mid 2023. And I mean, I remember that message I got from one person saying that they sold out of all of it in mid 2023. And what was mid 2023? That was literally the eve of us realizing the market had already turned. WotC had already fixed collector boxes. Some of the collector boxes we were already holding were the fixed ones that have done incredible since then. Things like Phyrexia. And that person sold out right then at the worst possible time. They held the longest amount of time underwater and sold before that rising tide came in and absolutely lifted all those collector boxes. And even terrible collector boxes, like I always cite Kaldheim as one of the worst. Kaldheim and Streets, even those have been lifted up by that tide over the last 18 months since Black Friday 2023, when that was really the last bad time in the Magic market. And it's been pretty much all uphill since then. But there were people who were so impatient that they sold out at the worst possible time. They were in the market for all of the bad time, and they missed out on all the good time afterwards. And it's wild because I know people will do the same thing again. I know people will get discouraged, they will sell out, and they will leave right when we're about to hit the next greatest time to be here. And with Pokemon at some time, yes, I still believe at some time they will necessarily overshoot with the reprint quantities. I've been through my logic on that several times on video, and I still stand by it. They will absolutely overshoot to the high side on reprints. The market will become glutted. too many buyers will get discouraged at not being able to get product and paying too much for it. They will get tired of getting scalped. The scalpers themselves, the flippers, those guys, they will get tired of getting up every morning and waiting in line at Best Buy and GameStop and wherever else, and only being able to buy a little bit of product and then going through the effort to flip it. And maybe they will reach a point where they're holding a bunch of product they can no longer flip for what they wish they could get. They will go away. Some collectors will take a break because they hate the high prices. And so the buying demand will be reduced at the same time that the supply is overshooting. Prices will start to correct, just like 2021, 2022, 2023. Just like that, it will happen again. And when it does, we here at Final Trade will be buying like madmen, just like we did in late 21 and early 22, and have achieved 720% gains already. So it will happen again, and just like last time, the people with patience, the people who can stomach a temporary paper loss on an asset, will do the best in the long run, just like they do in the stock market, just like they do in every single market. And the people who are too emotional, panic too easily, sell too soon, and think they're protecting what they have left, they will miss the upside like they did before. And it's just the wildest thing to watch again and again and again. And to watch it for 20 years in the stock market, watch it with coworkers who tell me their stories of selling out their child's college fund at the 2009 lows and admitting that they will have to work many extra years in order to pay for their kids' college because of it. Seeing people do things like that again and again, and knowing people will continue to do it, and that the harsh lessons of the past are, for most people, very difficult to learn. One thing that I try to tell my kids a lot is it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And I hope I can effectively teach that to them and to at least a few people here. And so I hope that as the Pokemon market eventually cracks, eventually rolls over, as the supply eventually clogs up store shelves, as the flippers eventually go away, as the collectors eventually get discouraged, and as all of those things combine to cause the prices to plummet, I hope everyone watching this has the patience to stay here with us and buy like madmen, so that when we're on the next upswing in 2028, 2029, whenever it comes, you can be here with us saying, man, 4, 5, 6, 700% returns in 2.5 years. You can be in on it then too, and not have chosen to miss out. It's absolutely wild, and everything about the TCG market is perfectly engineered to magnify all of the insanity, and it is so friggin' exciting. I love it. Thanks a lot, guys.